Welcome back to Decision 300. I'm Fred Jones, your host. We have Monroe Mays. We have Gordon Jackson. We've been talking about some really, really interesting, deep things that we're really trying to get established and started. Again, I want to say thank you to the young men and women here at Lincoln High School. We are always talking about that. We never expand upon or expound upon what our youth are really trying to do. And I can tell you right now that I'm being filmed by a young lady. I'm being counted off by a young man. I've got my brother in the background on the camera. We've got students that are working the boards. Everything is working flawlessly. The set is looking wonderful. That's what's happening here at Lincoln. So everybody's sending money all over to Highland Park, and we talk about Colleyville, but you got to really start talking about what's going on with our children so that we can get some money down here. Speaking of money, and speaking on a few things, Brother Monroe Mays, you had something that you wanted to touch on, and I'm going to go ahead and let you go ahead and touch on that.
Earlier, Gordon talked about an image, and when I thought about that, if you familiarize yourself with biblical principle, the word brotherhood is only used in the Bible twice. It's used in the Old Testament once and the New Testament, but both times they talk about brotherhood. They talk about a kinship, and they talk about how we as brothers are supposed to create a kinship with any young men that's coming up. And to me, Gordon, you talked about an image. Yes. We are to be the image that the young men see when they come up.
Right.
Yes. Because if we don't, then they have nothing to look forward to or look to except what they see on television. But if we create the image, then we give them something that's familiar to them, something that's tangible, that they can touch and see right here in their communities.
All right, I'm going to throw a little monkey on this, little monkey wrench with this. I'm going to tell you. I hear that, and we know this has to happen. The problem, Gordon, is how do we make it happen? We have been singing the same song for as long as I can remember, particularly down here in South Dallas. We've had a 20-year deterioration. Gentrification has been happening and within our community. So folks are moving out, and where are these folks moving out to? And when I'm out at the Hutchins unit in the jails are still really populated, so that's where all I'm in. So how do we combat that so that they can see some young men that are actually productive and producing?
Well, Brother Monroe is taking care through his program. He's taking care of one of them, and that is character building. I think there are three very important tenets: the family structure, character building, and promoting education. And what we need to do is that we need to create a culture, and we can't wait for and hope for somebody else to create it for us. We've got to create it for ourselves. And we need to create a culture where it's cool to go to school and do your best, where it's cool to make good grades, and where it's cool to strive for excellence. And we've just got to go ahead and create. It's a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. But if we take care of those three tenets: family structure, character building, and education, and have it to where we can curb that high dropout rate, particularly among young black males, and have them stay in school and learn and then go on to college. Because I think there's a statistic that I just see: 65% of black male high school dropouts in their 20s are jobless. And this is back in 2007, and it's probably higher with the economic downturn from last year. So education has a direct correlation with the outlook and with the hope, the spirit of hope among our young black men. And so that is definitely one of the legs that needs to be rectified.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. Normally when we talk about brotherhood in the church, those of you who attend church, you'll find out that they normally talk about men. But what we're doing in this Dallas Citywide Brotherhood is now all of our brotherhood meetings include young men. Our president, Brother Lester Price, by the way, who's a member of Golden Gate Baptist Church, has mandated to us that every time we have a program, every time we have a meeting, we need to have something that the young brothers, 8 years old and up, will have a part on that program so they can start seeing themselves as brothers at an early age. We can't wait until they get to be teenagers because their interest is somewhere else.
And I can attest to that, with those of you who are familiar with my wife and I's program, Jones 2000 Beyond, that's what we have been really attacking over the past 20 years. Another thing that we really attack is the relationships because a lot of our men have misguided relationships, not only their families, but with the young women that they get involved in. And so we have to start to create families. But let's bridge into something else real quick here. Well, let's get into the economic situation that we're having, and how does that affect our brotherhood, and how does that affect us as men when we talk about economics. We talk about the global economics, when we talk about the gross world product, we're talking about purchasing power, we're talking about the World Trade Organization, which from what I understand is probably one of the most powerful organizations on the planet, the World Trade Organization. So how does this economic system, particularly in our community, how are we going to be able to attack that and be more self-sufficient and self-reliant? Because we keep waiting on folks to give us some money, and they're not going to give us anything if there's nothing to give.
Well, you know, one of the things that I like to always point out is that we have the money. We have the money within our community. Next year, 2010, the spending power for Black America will be a cool $1 trillion. $1 trillion. But unfortunately, Black businesses, organizations, and institutions are bringing in only between 5 and 6% of that $1 trillion. And if we can restructure to change the culture to where we're doing business with ourselves, to where we support each other, and things to where we can at least get it up to 10 cents out of a dollar, 15 cents out of a dollar, we will see a difference. We will see changes. We will create jobs. We wouldn't have to wait to see if somebody is going to give us a job. And we will create jobs and opportunities for the community and for everybody, including our young Black men and everybody else included.
Okay, how do we deal with that from a Christian perspective? Those of you probably have heard the parable of the rich young ruler, or the rich young fool. Well, remember what Jesus told him. He said, you've gathered all of this money. He wanted to know what was going to happen, how could he get eternal life. Jesus told him to sell all his goods and follow him. Give to the poor and follow him. Well, we know that's really not what a person is going to do. But when you put that in perspective, just like we do everything else, there should be a certain amount of money put aside. We have enough rich, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys, if you look at the Dallas Mavericks, we have enough rich millionaire, African-American type here in Dallas.
Yes, we do.
And if they would just put aside a little bit to help nurturing the African-American boys of the African-American community here, then what would we do? Where could we be?
We would be,
because that's where the brotherhood is, to form a kinship and to bring others along behind you.
We'll be much farther ahead. Thank you for that. Now, we have one more segment, and on the last segment, we're going to bring up Dr. Helen Gibson, who's going to talk to us a little bit about health care. Again, that is a very, very big deal here in this country. It is really grossly affecting the African-American community in a harsh fashion, more than any other communities out there. So on our next segment, we're going to roll in with Dr. Helen Gibson, and we're going to be right back here, Decision 300, Fred Jones, Gordon, and Monroe with Dr. Gibson. Right back.